If your goal is to buy some rental property this year, I think it definitely would be worth it to talk with a realtor, talk with a professional like myself, learn what your options are before you make any decisions, and see what you need to get started. So, the first step is to see what kind of property investments are at your disposal. Depending on the kind of area you are, it might be better to do something like BRRR, where you buy, rehab, rent it out, and then refinance. Or it might be better to do something like short-term rental, or you might have steadier income by doing a 1 year type of lease. It could be even more profitable to do negotiable leases. Some people love to do multi-year leases in areas that are more rural, just because you have less turnover. So it might be more beneficial to have a tenant sign up for a longer term than a year. If you're looking at something near vacation areas, sometimes having a blend of midterm and short term or doing some month to month here and there can really help maximize your property value. So it's really important to understand how people with property are making money with similar properties like yours. On the topic of money, the first step is to understand your finances. So if you're going to do a budget with a mortgage or with cash, you're going to need to know the numbers. What is your all in? What are you willing to raise capital for? Are you willing to bring in partners, or is it going to be something that you're going to rely on yourself to complete? If something happens, what's the backup plan? Because roughly 2/3 of real estate transactions that enter into a contract period either have something change because the seller and the buyer could not agree on one thing or another, and the deal has to change from the initial offer just to make it through. And a third of them end up falling through because they could not agree on something to keep the deal going. So, understanding your finances and really narrowing down what you feel comfortable with risk wise is a great tool, but also just nice to know because as you're looking at these properties, it's always good to educate yourself on other people's stories and their case studies. So, on top of understanding your finances, because there's so many different things you can do as far as creativity in the space of real estate, read as many stories as you can, educate yourself when you're not looking at properties, learn what other people did with their finances, either with books or podcasts or whatever you can do, in person meetups, asking questions, and you'll be in a much better place than if you only went and talked to a lender, guaranteed. When it comes to researching the market, there's a lot of avenues to do this. Some people cannot go to the market where they can invest. For example, if you live in DC, like I used to live in, nobody could buy a house right away unless you had some serious income or your parents were helping you or you got lucky. So when you look at markets, I would always look at the cost of ownership for the average person if they bought a house and the cost of renting in that area as well, because that tells you if there's going to be more people renting and more people owning and what most people would have to make in order to live in that market. Because at the end of the day, when you invest in property, you are committing to having something that's going to market people. And if you want to attract people, think about what you want to provide. What is the product? What value do you want to bring to these people? Because when they come to your house, do you want them to only come for 1 year? Or is it more important that they become a returning person? All these things are things that you want to understand with rental demand and growth, because appreciation is the easiest way to make extra money, but it's not the best way to make the fastest amount of money if you are too hung up on staying in that market. Because one thing we do know for sure is that market and prices change, they shift, and sometimes it's good to be in a market at a certain period of time, and the longevity you have in a market definitely helps you out. But you always want to consider what's going on and where's the potential. Is there construction? Are people moving out, moving in? Is there new businesses coming to the area? What value am I going to bring to these people? Because at the end of the day, I want to market to them and I want them to come to me. On the same topic of having people come to you, market has a lot to do with location. Where you're located could make or break what type of person you attract, not whether or not you ever make money as a rental. There are plenty of locations that I've seen have, great tenants who've been there for years, 10 years plus, and it's next to a railroad. And some people might be like, oh, that's not a good investment because it's next to a railroad. But the kind of tenant that you wanted, if that's the kind of tenant you want and that's what they can afford, it makes it a good investment for you because you're still making a return and you're maximizing profit and minimizing vacancy. So always look at areas, locations, what is nearby, what are the plans for the city, go to the county website. Also, when it comes to location, which most people don't think about in certain areas, but have to think about in this area, is water access and how it's going to impact whether or not you might need flood insurance, as well as locations where maybe the soil might not be that good, depending on whether or not of how close it is to maybe the sand and all that kind of thing. So if you guys are planning to have, a garden, and if you want to be maintaining sod, and if you prefer something a little bit less low key and less high maintenance, locations have their own requirements. Because if you're in a house in Suffolk, chances are your neighbors, if they're not condo owners, might have a lot of acreage, and you're going to have to make plans for that as you manage the property. If it's a smaller acreage, obviously you can figure that out, but location is going to affect your management fees, what you expect to manage, and even what your tenants expect to manage as well. And going back to location, I do want to point out that I've had people tell me that they were coming in from another area even, and they were planning to rent. So their plan was to come and rent out something, and they wanted something that reminded them of where they used to be. And what they looked for was what they could do on the weekend and after work. So think about what your ideal tenant might be doing on the weekend and after work. Now let's go on to the number 4, which is the plan to start. It's very easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis and start thinking, hey, I don't know if I could do this. Maybe I should wait. You could wait 5 years, 10 years, and that property value is going to continue to go up, and you're just continuing to need to save more. And you'll continue to have more options every day because properties come on and off the market all the time. So I need you, as something that you could do for yourself, is dedicate, a time to decide how and when to start. Because let's say you're an Olympic athlete, right? You can't just start exercising. You have to meet with somebody. You have to analyze the plan. You have to set a goal. You have to track your numbers. You have to prepare yourself so that when you do actually start, you can actually get to the goal and win. Because what people don't realize about real estate is that it's a competitive sport. And if you're going to be buying properties all the time, there's going to be some rejection. There are going to be some days where you don't feel like looking at properties, where you are like, dang, everything out here is not meeting the marks I wanted it to hit. So really plan to start and then plan to stick to it, because you can definitely build a lot of equity by buying what you can with where you can buy it, or you can wait and miss out on some opportunities sitting on the sidelines. Not to say you need to rush, but definitely set goals to start and goals to continue. Maybe even rewards and punishments for not sticking to it. That's a whole thing, up to you. Some people do that for fitness goals and it works. It can apply to anything that requires coaching and is competitive. Number 5 is factoring in additional costs. So the additional costs of owning a rental property are the main reason why some rental properties simply do not make any money, and they're not profitable. And whenever somebody inherits them, they end up having to sell them because it could not be managed any other way, and it's just been let go. Somebody was counting on appreciation to be the saving grace, and they don't plan to put any more money into the property. So whenever we buy properties, we always expect them to have problems, right? We expect to need repairs. We expect there to be a reason that somebody needed to sell that property. Sometimes everything is perfectly fine with the property, and it's the person that just needs a change. So whenever we factor in additional costs, some of these costs when it comes to rental properties could even be court, sheriff, eviction, attorneys, management of obviously, because you have to have somebody manage the property if you don't plan to own or occupy and manage it yourself. Insurance, which definitely fluctuates. Potential vacancy could cost you things that you could not have accounted for. Depending on what area you're in, it could just take 100 days to find a tenant. So we really need to look at the market trends, what also has expired, been canceled, and withdrawn. And these are all things that can help you kind of factor in additional costs. From a realtor perspective, I usually run some basic numbers on what properties are renting for in the area. I know what some people manage properties for, but I'm always happy to recommend anybody who could help you address any of these additional costs and help you manage some expectations around that. Seeking professional advice is the next step. On number 6, this is the last step. Obviously, every step of the way, you're going to be seeking professional advice because you're going to need a professional to hit the mark. If you do it yourself, you can. You might need a mentor, and that's technically a professional if they have done this before. But I would say that is the number one thing I love and I appreciate whenever I work with somebody, whether it's a doctor, a dentist, any type of professional, a lawyer even. I would love somebody who is willing to go the extra mile, do a little bit more research, tell me what's going on, and always be looking to educate and add value and share opportunities to add value that might not be so clear and obvious, because in life we always have to prepare ourselves for unexpected events. And when you have a professional, it's a little bit easier to navigate those unexpected events compared to when you are cold calling as a rookie investor and driving for dollars. Yes, bigger pockets and a lot of investor websites encourage that because a lot of people don't have a lot of money to start, and it is a way to get started. But it is a lot of hardship, and I've heard from people who do that, how tough it is to find these people. And there have been times where I've even heard of people who went out, try to get some wholesaling deal going, and it turned out that the house they got under contract was really a mobile home. And that does not require a purchase agreement. It actually requires a bill of sale because it's technically personal property because it's movable. And that person did not own the land. And so this rookie investor ended up having this contract that said that they wanted to buy this mobile home that they knew they could not buy, and were trying to find a buyer for it. And it was such a mess and so stressful for him that he was just like, I don't know what to do anymore, and gave up on that for a long time. And it's very demotivating because on top of real estate being like a professional's game, there's a lot of people who like to scam people as well in the area, in this field, because it's so easy to just think that you're talking to the right person or end up being scammed because somebody advertised something. I was showing a rental property to a person who found me online, and she was asking me at the end of it, she was like, do you know the property manager personally? Like, do you know if they have a history, like they've never scammed anyone before? And I was like, I've been working with this property manager for a few years now. He's been in the industry for well over 30 years. I don't think he's ever scammed anybody. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be in the industry anymore. And I told her what, I knew. And then I asked her, like, what was your experience? Why did you bring that up? And she told me that the last place that she rented, the property manager took her money and took the money of a lot of other people. And this property manager worked for a brokerage. I'm not going to say which one, but it was a brokerage that was local here in Hampton. The property was around the area, and I felt so bad for her because she told me that this person is now being sued. They can't find them. They probably spent all the money, and it's impacted her goal and her family's goal to buy property, and that she could only rent for the next year again because they took her security deposit and part of her rent. So it's really important every step of the way to work with professionals. So that way, you know who you're working with. You have an idea of people who are boots on the ground for you if you're out of state. I'm very happy to provide some credible people in the area who have years of industry experience and can get you some idea of where your finances could be if you take the route of becoming a property owner of an investment property around here or anywhere else in Virginia. So if you really are ready to take the step of learning more about your particular case, what you need to do in order to start buying investment property, please don't hesitate to contact me for a personalized real estate consultation. I'm taking clients right now, and I'm happy to give you an idea whether or not you even have to sell a property. I sell properties as well, condos included. So if you want to sell something in order to buy, or you just want to take the equity out, use a HELOC to buy, I help people with that. DSCR, I've done that before. Help people look for something with a DSCR that would allow the debt to be covered by the rental income, and can happily, advise you on the next steps to start growing your portfolio and hopefully have a wonderful financial portfolio at the end, because we always got to think long term in this industry. Nothing is ever short term, even when it's temporary and you need an exit strategy. Always think long term. What am I building? How do I want to grow as a person? What am I doing for my future, for my family? And that's what keeps me going as a person, because one of the things people don't know about me is that my family came here from Africa, Zambia specifically, and they, worked a government job, civil servants, dedicated, but the whole time in my culture, we were taught invest in your future, invest in property. So even my grandfather built his own property with brick. And my father, he bought property from America, and he had family members and people in his life help him and support him, but it wasn't professional because in Zambia, we don't have real estate agents who do things for you. Most people kind of just do things here and there, and it's not a super regulated industry. So in the process, they made a lot of mistakes. They had a lot of hardship as they were trying to get their rental property set up. And it took a lot of years of learning for them to finally make it profitable. And when it was, it really wasn't everything that they hoped. And so they had to reevaluate, reconsider. And that's what kind of motivates me to help people, because when they were a young family, that helped them get going and really create a legacy for themselves. And looking back almost 30 years now, they have done so well for themselves, but they also feel like they've made a lot of mistakes because they didn't have the regulations and the support of a professional the whole way. And my mom always tells me this, like, I definitely think that your dad and I would have had an easier time had we had a real estate professional or even a home builder person who, was dedicated to understanding build to rent and rental values and what their return could be on their investment. Because it has really been more of an appreciation play. And that's what happens to a lot of people in America, is that their family buys a property, they say, never sell the property, never sell it, we'll never sell it. And it eventually becomes a lot of work for the people who end up having to manage it, and a lot of work to turn it around and make it much more profitable. So please take the story a little bit as a little piece of what you can know about me. I'm happy to definitely meet up with you for coffee, happy hour, anything like that if you're in Hampton Roads, and just have a quick chit chat. It doesn't have to be super serious or super about numbers. I work with Bigger Pockets as a featured agent, so I do love to talk to people and connect just to talk about real estate. I'm happy to help you any way I can in all 7 cities and maybe even surrounding ones if you are open to meeting. Let me know. Thank you so much for listening, and you have a wonderful day.